brutal murder of one woman, Sarah Everard. Brought to light.
Whose street? Our street! Whose street? Our street! Whose street? Our street!
The everyday violence against hundreds of thousands of women and girls right across this nation.
Our street!
But is change coming? I've been to one police force in southern England to find out.
We're at a critical moment of opportunity.
They get beaten up, they get raped, they get assaulted. They're really vulnerable.
I thought I was going to die that night.
Well, you thought he was going to kill you?
Yeah.
Violence against women and girls has been described as an epidemic by those on the front line trying to deal with perpetrators. Recent high-profile cases has certainly put the problem into public view, as well as putting pressure on politicians to act. But as the former Home Secretary said to me recently, there is inconsistency across different forces in dealing with the issue. So I came to this one to find out what they're doing. Avon and Somerset Police, hundreds of miles from Westminster and its lawmakers. But the crimes here replicated nationwide. England and Wales saw the highest ever number of recorded sexual offences in the year to March. Sarah Crewe is the national lead for rape and sexual offences and the first female chief constable of this force.
I think we're at a critical moment of opportunity. Some of the problems are the same, they're difficult, they're societal. We've taken steps forward, but we've also taken steps back.
When you say steps forward and steps back, can you give me just one thing that you think is a step backwards?
We were starting to make progress on understanding, as practitioners, how to tackle it. For a variety of reasons, not least austerity, we had to make some choices in policing, and Avon and Somerset was no different from other forces, and that specialism had to retract slightly.
With choices come hard consequences, but this force now the first to pilot a new programme, Operation Soteria, a focus on the suspect rather than the credibility of the victim. It seems to me that often in the discussions around sexual violence against women and girls, harassment, it's always about women, these are the behaviours you need to change in order to make yourself safer.
We hear women up and down the country saying they want better, and that's why it's a priority. But the focus needs to be on how we're understanding those perpetrators, how they're exploiting the system.
A system focusing as much on girls and boys as it does women. There's just one school in Bristol being taught about the dangers of exploitation.
First of all, do you know what grooming is?
Child Protection Officer Andre has worked on behalf of Avon and Somerset for almost 20 years. Much of her time spent on an operation called Topaz, which brings together various agencies to focus on preventing both the sexual and criminal exploitation of children.
I think it's getting easier for people to groom children, especially online. You don't need to go to parks now to find kids. You go on Snapchat, you go on TikTok. It's getting younger, and that's something I see, especially after the COVID. The online grooming is getting younger. It has now gone into primary schools and from year 3.
Since January, Andre has taught 13,000 children of both primary and secondary age about how to best protect themselves.
So if you have someone who says to you, if you don't send me a photograph of yourself naked, I don't want to be with you, you know what? You know what you need to do? Say bye.
Lessons they're learning, and fast.
What did you learn?
Like, not taking pictures of, like, yourself when you're, like, naked or something. Because they might, like, share the picture to other people and post it online.
I found something that's fascinating was, like, how dangerous, how, like, public is these days. Even, like, a park near my house, like, my friends keep on saying that, like, don't go there after 7 o'clock because apparently drug dealings happens there.
Is the scale of the challenge in trying to protect children, and by children you mean under 18-year-olds?
That's
yeah?
right.
Is it getting easier or harder?
Much harder, I would say, because we know that exploitation exists. We work very hard to safeguard children, but in the intervening 7 years, the role of the internet has really accelerated the grooming process. I would say there's a greater risk now.
How are you doing things differently, would you say, to the past, or you're evolving as the threat changes?
Every serious case review you look at will tell you that the key failure is between professionals and communication between professionals. And so that's the objective for Topaz, is to work with our partners and to share as much information as possible.
Hello.
Hello, it's Tom. What can I do for you?
Hi, I'm just booking on. I'm part of the Street Sex Worker Guardianship Programme today. I am working until approximately midnight and I'm with Joe Ritchie from Bernardo's.
Partners like Lucy and Joe critical to that information sharing. It's Tuesday night and they're out on patrol in an unmarked car in central Bristol.
Oh, is he picking her up though? He's picking her up.
There you go.
Go forward a bit just so I can get a bit of a view of who she is.
They're working to safeguard and protect vulnerable sex workers with a view to gaining both their trust and intelligence about how children are being exploited.
We have always known for years and years and years that these areas are a hotspot for children being targeted for the purposes of sexual exploitation, and that is very much because of it being an area affected by street sex work. So there are customers who are cycling to, walking to, driving to the area with the intention of purchasing sex, and some of them obviously will have a preference for children. But it's always been really difficult to get a handle on.
This is a complex situation, both women and girls targeted, and over half the women working on these streets abused as children. It's a cycle so often repeating itself.
It's a really, really, really sad situation. It's a really sad place to be, and I think the stereotype and the stigma they've got is just really unnecessary and cruel, really. These are vulnerable women that need looking after and safeguarding.
Vulnerable women on the streets, but inside homes too, which is much less visible, but the risk is just the same.
You all deal with domestic abuse on a daily basis.
This training course for student officers, part of a new initiative to transform the response to domestic abuse and increase understanding about its variants.
It's got a particular emphasis on controlling and coercive behaviour, which is a reasonably new piece of legislation, and it's about reinforcing what that legislation is and how officers can deal with it when they go to scenes. The victim isn't necessarily coming forward about the details about what's happened. So it's about using the right questions, looking for the right clues.
Clues which can be hard to spot, often hidden, and behind closed doors, 80% of domestic abuse is unreported, a crime which affects a quarter of women in their lifetime and can happen to anyone.
I think the problem is vast. We're probably just beginning to get to grips with just how much of an epidemic it is.
Chief Inspector Sharon Baker, the lead on domestic abuse for this force, a victim herself.
I felt that sense of embarrassment really deeply, that I was supposed to be protecting people, yet I couldn't protect myself. So that kept me locked in silence. I was told I was never good enough. My confidence was eroded to the point where I doubted every decision I made. I could come to work and make decisions as a supervisor, quite critical ones, but yet when I went home, I was told that I couldn't see that my friends were no good for me.
Abuse that continued for several years, but one night things changed. Words becoming threats and more.
When I tried to leave, right, when I realised it was over and I told him it was over, then that night, yeah, it became physical, and I was assaulted. I called the police because I was absolutely terrified. I thought I was going to die that night.
Well, you thought he was going to kill you?
Yeah.
That fear felt by women everywhere, in Bristol and far beyond. Women demanding
change.
Whether it happens, how long it takes, and what change looks like. These all questions society, the police and the justice system will need to answer. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Bristol.